Henry Davis sat in his judge's chair, looking down at the long line of people waiting their turn. He had been a judge for 20 years now. Sometimes the faces all seemed to blend together. He was tired today. His back hurt, and he had too many cases to get through. "Next case," he called without looking up from his papers. A woman in a neat black suit stepped forward. She stood straight, with her head held high. There was something different about her, but Judge Davis was too busy to notice. "Emma Wilson, Your Honor," she said in a clear, strong voice. "I'm here about a ticket for an expired car registration." Judge Davis finally looked up at her. Emma Wilson was a tall black woman with kind eyes that looked a bit sad. She carried a small folder of papers in her hands. 300 pounds, Judge Davis said quickly, already reaching for his gavel. "Next, Your Honor, if I may," Emma said, not moving from her spot. "I would like to explain the circumstances." Judge Davis sighed. Everyone had a story. Everyone had an excuse. If he listened to them all, he'd be here until midnight. "Make it quick," he said. "Thank you, Your Honor." Emma opened her folder. "I was returning from Birmingham, where I had to arrange and attend my mother's funeral. She passed away suddenly last month. During that difficult time, I'm afraid I overlooked renewing my car registration. I have proof of her passing and the funeral. Arrangements here." She held up some papers, but Judge Davis didn't look at them. The courtroom was full. He had at least 30 more cases to get through. "The law is the law, Ms. Wilson," he said firmly. "While I'm sorry for your loss, grief doesn't change the fact that you were driving with an expired registration. 300 pounds. Emma Wilson looked at him for a long moment. She didn't argue or get upset. She simply nodded, put her papers back in her folder, and said, "I understand, Your Honor." As she turned to leave, another paper fell from her folder. A young clerk picked it up and handed it back to her. "Thank you," Emma said to the clerk with a small smile. Are you Dr. Wilson from Westfield University?" the clerk asked, quietly. "Yes, I am," Emma replied. The clerk looked impressed, but Emma just walked away, her head still held high. Judge Davis called the next case, not thinking twice about what had just happened, but the clerk kept looking at the door where Emma had left. During the lunch break, Judge Davis sat in his chambers eating a sandwich. The young clerk knocked on his door. "What is it, Oliver?" Judge Davis asked. "Sir, I just thought you might want to know," Oliver said nervously. "That woman this morning, Emma Wilson? She's actually Dr. Emma Wilson. She's one of the top law professors at Westfield University. She writes books about justice reform. I have one of her books in my bag. We studied it in law school." Judge Davis stopped chewing. "Are you certain?" "Yes, sir. She's quite famous in legal circles. She gives talks all over the country about fairness in the courts, actually." Judge Davis put down his sandwich. He suddenly felt uncomfortable. He thought about how quickly he had dismissed her, not even looking at her evidence or considering her circumstances. "Thank you, Oliver," he said quietly. After the clerk left, Judge Davis sat alone in his chambers. He opened his laptop and typed in, "Dr. Emma Wilson, Westfield University." Dozens of results appeared. Articles she had written, interviews she had given, books she had published. There was even a picture of her receiving an award from the Prime Minister for her work on legal ethics. Judge Davis closed his laptop and looked out the window. For the first time in years, he wondered if he had been doing his job properly. Had he become too focused on getting through cases quickly? Had he stopped seeing the people who stood before him? He thought about Emma Wilson's dignified manner, how she hadn't argued or complained when he dismissed her so quickly. Would he have treated her differently if he had known who she was? Should that even matter? As he prepared to return to court, for the afternoon session, Judge Davis made a silent promise to himself. He would try harder to see the person behind each case. He would remember that everyone who came before him had a story, whether they were famous professors or ordinary people. Little did he know that his path would cross with Dr. Emma Wilson's again, very soon. 2 weeks after the courtroom incident, Judge Henry Davis found himself at the yearly meeting of the British Legal Association. He hadn't planned to attend, but his boss had insisted. "It will be good for you to hear some new ideas," the Chief Justice had told him. The meeting was held in a grand old hotel in London. Judges, lawyers, and law professors from all over the country filled the large hall. Judge Davis sat at the back, feeling out of place. He flipped through the program booklet looking for something interesting. His eyes stopped on the name of the main speaker, Dr. Emma Wilson, Professor of Law, Westfield University. His stomach tightened. It was the same woman he had fined 2 weeks ago. The woman whose explanation he had dismissed without a second thought. "Our keynote speaker today needs no introduction," the host announced. "She is one of our nation's most respected voices on legal reform and courtroom ethics." Judge Davis watched as Emma Wilson walked onto the stage. She wore a deep blue suit and moved with the same quiet dignity she had shown in his courtroom. The crowd clapped loudly. Many people stood up to show their respect. "Thank you all for that warm welcome," Emma began. Her voice was clear and strong, filling the hall without needing to shout. "Today I want to talk about something that matters to all of us, seeing the human being in our legal system." Judge Davis sank lower in his seat. He hoped she wouldn't notice him. "Every day in courtrooms across our country," Emma continued, "people stand before judges hoping to be seen and heard as human beings, not just as case numbers." She spoke about how the pressure to move quickly through crowded court schedules often led to hasty decisions. She talked about the importance of listening, of taking time to understand each person's unique situation. "Justice isn't just about following rules," she said. "It's about seeing the real person standing before you, their life, their struggles, their worth as a human." As she said these words, her eyes seemed to scan the room. For a brief moment, her gaze met Judge Davis's. He felt his face grow hot. Did she recognize him? He couldn't tell from her expression. Emma continued her talk, sharing stories of people who had gone to court feeling scared and alone, only to find themselves treated as numbers rather than as people. She didn't mention her own experience in Judge Davis's courtroom, but she didn't need to. He knew he was guilty of everything she described. After the talk, people lined up to speak with her. Judge Davis stood to the side, uncertain what to do. Part of him wanted to leave to escape the shame he felt, but a stronger part knew he needed to face this. When the crowd around Emma thinned, he approached her. She was gathering her notes. When she looked up and saw him, "Dr. Wilson," he said quietly, "I'm Judge Henry Davis. You were in my courtroom 2 weeks ago." Emma looked at him for a long moment. "Yes, I remember, Your Honor." "I wanted to apologize," he said, the words feeling strange in his mouth. Judges rarely apologized. "I didn't give your case the attention it deserved. I didn't even look at your evidence." Emma put down her notes. "May I ask why you're telling me this now, Judge Davis? Is it because you've learned I'm a law professor?" The question stung because it hit at the truth. Would he be apologizing if she had been anyone else? "That's a fair question," he admitted. "Perhaps that's what made me notice my mistake initially. But your talk today, it made me realize I've been doing this to everyone, not just to you." Emma studied his face, as if trying to determine if he was sincere. "I've been a judge for 20 years, he continued. "Somewhere along the way I started seeing cases, not people." A small smile appeared on Emma's face. "Recognizing that is the first step toward change, Judge Davis." She reached into her bag and pulled out a book. It was her latest work, Humanity on Trial, Bringing Compassion Back to the Courtroom. "Perhaps you might find this interesting," she said, handing it to him. Judge Davis accepted the book, feeling both humbled and grateful. "Thank you. I will read it." As he turned to leave, Emma called after him. "Judge Davis?" He turned back. "We're having a panel discussion at Westfield University Law School next month on reforming courtroom practices. Would you be interested in sharing your perspective?" The guy's invitation surprised him. "Me? Why would you want me there?" Emma smiled again, more warmly this time. "Because change happens when people are willing to learn and grow, and that seems to be where you are right now." Judge Davis nodded. a new feeling of purpose stirring within him. I would be honored. Dr. Wilson. Judge Davis couldn't sleep that night. He tossed and turned in his bed, Emma Wilson's words from the conference playing over and over in his mind. When the clock showed 2 a.m., he gave up on sleep and turned on his lamp. He picked up Emma's book from his nightstand. Humanity on Trial, Bringing Compassion Back to the Courtroom. He ran his fingers over the cover before opening it. On the first page was a simple message, for those who stand before judges waiting to be truly seen. Those words hit him hard. How many people had stood before him over the years, hoping to be seen as human beings with real lives and real problems. He began to read. Emma wrote about the law in a way that was both wise and easy to understand. She told stories of people who had come to court, a single mother who couldn't pay her parking tickets because she had to choose between that and feeding her children, an elderly man who didn't understand the paperwork he was supposed to fill out, a young person who made one mistake and needed guidance more than punishment. As dawn broke, Judge Davis was still reading. He finished the book as the sun came up. He felt changed somehow, as if he was seeing his job through new eyes. That morning in court, Judge Davis looked different. His clerk, Oliver, noticed it right away. "Are you feeling all right, sir?" Oliver asked. "Never better," Judge Davis replied. "Let's make sure we really listen to people today, shall we?" Oliver looked surprised but pleased. "Yes, sir." The first case was a young man named Thomas Brown. He had been caught speeding, going 50 miles per hour in a 30 zone. "Mr. Brown," Judge Davis said, "before I decide on your fine, can you tell me what happened that day?" The young man looked startled. He clearly hadn't expected the judge to ask. "Well, Your Honor, my wife was in labor. I was driving her to the hospital. Our baby was coming 2 weeks early, and I was scared." In the past, Judge Davis might have doubted this story or asked for proof. Today, he simply looked at the young man, really looked at him, and saw the truth in his eyes. "Do you have a picture of your baby?" Judge Davis asked. Thomas's face lit up. He pulled out his phone and showed the judge a picture of a tiny baby girl. "This is Lily. She's 2 weeks old now." Judge Davis smiled. "She's beautiful. Congratulations." He paused. "Given the emergency situation, I'm going to reduce your fine to a warning. But Mr. Brown, even in emergencies, we need to be careful on the roads. Next time, call an ambulance." "Yes, Your Honor." "Thank you." As Thomas left, looking relieved and happy, Oliver leaned over. "That was kind of you, sir." "It wasn't kindness," Judge Davis replied. "It was justice." The next case was an elderly woman named Margaret Wilson, no relation to Emma. She had received multiple parking tickets in disabled spaces, but she didn't have a disabled parking permit. "Mrs. Wilson," Judge Davis said gently, "can you tell me why you parked in those spaces?" The old woman looked nervous. "I've been having trouble with my eyes, Your Honor. I was diagnosed with macular degeneration 3 months ago. I can't see well enough to read the signs anymore. I didn't know they were disabled spaces." In the past, Judge Davis would have said that not being able to see signs meant she shouldn't be driving at all. Today, he took a different approach. "Mrs. Wilson, have you spoken with social services about getting help?" "No, Your Honor, I don't know how to do that. My husband used to handle everything, but he passed away last year." Judge Davis nodded. "I'm going to dismiss these tickets, Mrs. Wilson, but I'm also going to ask Oliver here to help you contact social services. They can help you get the support you need, including transportation options that would be safer for you than driving." The old woman's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Your Honor. I've been so lost since my Edward died." Case after case, Judge Davis took the time to listen, to understand, to see the person behind the legal issue. By lunchtime, he felt more fulfilled than he had in years. During the lunch break, he went back to his chambers and opened his computer. He searched for Emma Wilson's email address and began to write to her. "Dear Dr. Wilson," he typed. "I read your book last night, cover to cover. I want to thank you for helping me remember why I became a judge in the first place. It wasn't to process cases quickly. It was to serve justice with humanity. I would be honored to speak at your panel next month, not as an expert but as someone who is learning to see again. As he pressed send, Judge Davis felt a weight lift from his shoulders. For the first time in many years, he was excited about the work ahead. The days following Judge Davis's change of heart were busy ones. His courtroom still had the same number of cases, but somehow, they felt different. Each morning he arrived early and reviewed his cases with Oliver. They looked for signs that someone might need extra help or understanding. "Sir," Oliver said one morning, "have you noticed that people seem less angry when they leave your courtroom now?" Judge Davis nodded. When people feel heard, they can accept even difficult decisions with more grace. Word spread quickly about the change in Judge Davis. Lawyers who had once dreaded appearing in his courtroom now requested him. People who came before him left feeling that, whatever the outcome, they had been treated fairly. On a rainy Thursday, a case came before him that would test his new approach. James Roberts stood before the bench, his shoulders slumped. He was charged with stealing food from a local shop. "Mr. Roberts," Judge Davis said, "the shop owner says you took a loaf of bread and some cheese without paying. Is this true?" James looked at the floor. "Yes, Your Honor." "Can you tell me why?" James hesitated. In the past, Judge Davis would have grown impatient. Today, he waited. "I lost my job 3 months ago, Your Honor. I've been looking for work every day, but nothing has come through. Last week, I ran out of money. I hadn't eaten in 2 days." Judge Davis looked at the shop owner, who was also present in court. "Mr. Parker, is there anything you'd like to add?" The shop owner shifted uncomfortably. "Well, I need to protect my business, Your Honor, but I don't want to ruin the man's life over a loaf of bread." Judge Davis thought for a moment. "Mr. Roberts, stealing is against the law even when you're hungry. However, I believe there's a better way to handle this situation." He turned to Oliver. "Can we get the contact information for the community food bank in the job center?" Oliver nodded and quickly wrote down the information. "Mr. Roberts, I'm going to order you to do 20 hours of community service at the food bank. While you're there, you can also get food for yourself. And here's contact information for the job center that has special programs for people in your situation." Judge Davis handed him the paper. "I'm also ordering you to come back in 1 month to report on your progress." "Thank you, Your Honor," James said, his voice thick with emotion. After court adjourned for the day, Judge Davis found a small package on his desk with a note. "To the judge who gave me a second chance instead of just a fine. Thank you. James R." Inside was a handmade bookmark with the words "Justice with Mercy" painted on it. Judge Davis smiled as he placed the bookmark in Emma Wilson's book, which he kept on his desk now. Later that afternoon, Judge Davis received an email from Westfield University. It contained the details for the upcoming panel discussion. The email confirmed that he would be joining Dr. Emma Wilson and 2 other legal experts to discuss humanizing justice, bridging divides in the courtroom. As he read through the information, his phone rang. Judge Davis speaking. "Hello, Judge Davis, this is Emma Wilson." Judge Davis sat up straighter in his chair. "Dr. Wilson, it's good to hear from you. I wanted to personally thank you for agreeing to join our panel," she said. "Your perspective as a judge who is actively working to change his approach is valuable." "I should be thanking you," he replied. "Your book, your words at the conference, they made me rethink everything." There was a pause on the line. "Judge Davis, may I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "What made you start listening?" "Really listening?" Judge Davis thought about her question. "I think it was the look in your eyes when you stood in my courtroom. There was such dignity there, even when I was dismissing your words. And then when I realized who you were, not just a professor, but someone who had devoted her life to improving justice, I felt ashamed. But it was a useful kind of shame, the kind that makes you want to do better." Emma was quiet for a moment. "Thank you for your honesty. Not many people would admit that." "I'm learning that honesty is part of seeing clearly," he said. "I look forward to our panel next month," Emma said. "I think it's going to be quite meaningful." After they said goodbye, Judge Davis sat at his desk, thinking about how much had changed in just a few weeks. He had moved from being a judge who processed cases to one who saw people, from someone who applied the law blindly to someone who applied it with understanding, and it had all started because of a fine he had given to a woman in mourning, a woman he had failed to see clearly. Now he had a chance to make it right, not just with her, but with everyone who came into his courtroom. The day of the panel at Westfield University arrived. Judge Davis woke up early, feeling both nervous and excited. He put on his best suit and checked his notes one more time. He had prepared a short speech about his journey over the past month, but he wasn't sure if it was good enough. The university campus was beautiful, with old stone buildings and green lawns. Students hurried past carrying books and laptops. Judge Davis followed the signs to the law building, a grand structure with columns at the entrance. Inside, a student guide showed him to a waiting room where the other panelists were gathering. Emma Wilson was already there, talking with an older man. "Judge Davis," she said warmly, walking over to greet him. "I'm so glad you could make it. Let me introduce you to Professor Thomas Baker, the head of our law department." The two men shook hands, and soon they were joined by the fourth panelist, a woman named Rebecca Green who worked with people who couldn't afford lawyers. "It's a full house out there," Rebecca told them. Word got around that Judge Davis was speaking, and everyone wanted to hear about the judge who changed his ways. Judge Davis felt his face grow warm. "I'm not sure I deserve that much interest," Emma smiled. "People are hungry for stories of change, Judge Davis. It gives them hope." Soon, it was time to begin. They walked onto the stage to find the auditorium, packed with students, professors, and even some judges and lawyers from the local courts. Judge Davis spotted Oliver in the audience, who gave him an encouraging thumbs up. Emma introduced the panel and explained the topic: how to make the justice system more human. Professor Baker spoke first about the history of legal reforms. Then Rebecca talked about the challenges faced by people who couldn't afford good legal help. Finally, it was Judge Davis's turn. He took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. "For 20 years, he began, I believed justice meant applying the law the same way to everyone. What I failed to understand was that true equality means seeing each person's unique situation." He looked out at the audience, then at Emma sitting nearby. "Sometimes we need to be humbled to remember why we chose this profession. A month ago, a respected professor stood in my courtroom and I failed to see her, not just her job but her humanity, her grief, her dignity. The room was completely silent as he continued. That day changed me. Not because she was a law professor, but because she made me realize I had stopped seeing the people behind the cases." Judge Davis went on to share some of the stories from his courtroom over the past month. The young father rushing his wife to the hospital, the elderly woman who couldn't see the parking signs, the hungry man who stole bread. "The law isn't just words in books," he said. "It's a living promise we make to each other. And keeping that promise begins with seeing each other, truly seeing each other, across all the things that divide us." When he finished speaking, the room was quiet for a moment. Then someone began to clap. Others joined in, and soon the whole room was filled with applause. Judge Davis saw that some people had tears in their eyes. After the panel ended, students crowded around asking questions. One young woman raised her hand. "Judge Davis, what would you say to other judges who might be stuck in the old way of doing things?" Judge Davis thought for a moment. "I would say that it's never too late to remember why you became a judge in the first place, and that seeing people clearly doesn't make you less fair. It makes you more just." As the crowd began to thin, Emma Wilson approached him. "That was quite a speech, Judge Davis." "Thank you. I meant every word." "I know you did." She smiled. "And that's why I wanted to ask you something. I'm writing a new book about judges who are changing the system from within. Would you be willing to let me interview you for it?" Judge Davis was surprised. "Me? In your book?" "Yes. Your story is powerful, Judge Davis. It shows that change is possible even after 20 years of doing things the same way." He felt honored by her request. "I would be proud to contribute to your work, Dr. Wilson." As they walked together toward the exit, a young man approached them. Judge Davis recognized him immediately. It was James Roberts, the man who had stolen food and made him the bookmark. "Your Honor," James said with a smile, "I wanted you to know I got a job last week, and I've been volunteering at the food bank even after my community service hours were done." Judge Davis felt a wave of joy. "That's wonderful news, Mr. Roberts." Emma watched this exchange with a warm smile. "That," she said quietly to Judge Davis, "is what justice looks like." As they stepped outside into the sunshine, Judge Davis felt a deep sense of peace. His journey wasn't over, it was just beginning. But now he had the right compass to guide him, seeing the humanity in everyone who came before him, and remembering that true justice begins with truly seeing each other.